Thank you very much indeed, Sandra. And thank you to you and Catherine DeLong for the invitation to speak today. It's a great honor to be with you, and thank you very much indeed for having invited me. We're going through one of the 60-year transformations of business. Business has been a source of economic prosperity and the growth of nations around the world. It clothes, feeds, and houses us, employs us, and invests our savings. But at the same time, it's been a cause of increasing environmental degradation, inequality, social exclusion, and mistrust. But things are changing. In 2019, Larry Fink, the CEO and president of BlackRock, the largest investment management business in the world, said that every business needs a purpose, not a strapline or a marketing campaign, but a statement of its fundamental reason for being. Purpose, he said, is not the sole pursuit of profits, but the animating force for achieving them. In 2019, the Business Roundtable jettisoned its 1997 statement on corporate purpose as being about shareholder primacy in favor of one that said it's about delivering value to customers, investing in employees, supporting suppliers, caring for communities, and achieving long-term value for shareholders. The 2020 World Economic Forum at Davos was on the universal purpose of the company in the fourth industrial revolution. The pandemic has only served to reinforce a realization that purpose is critical to the success, resilience, and profitability of business. Indeed, the corporation was established some 2,000 years ago under Roman law as the Societas Publicanorum to provide very public functions, to collect taxes, mint coins, and maintain public buildings. And for nearly all of its 2,000-year history, it's combined a public with a commercial function. It's only over the last 60 years that the idea that the only purpose of business is to produce profits has emerged. Now, notice a very important feature of all of these statements that I've just referred to. They're not about pursuing a purpose beyond profit. They're about pursuing a purpose that promotes profit, but recognizes the importance of people and planet in producing profits. It's not about trade-offs. On the contrary, it's about how the pursuit of purpose enhances the performance of firms and their profitability. In other words, it's about a mutual benefit to both. And it's no longer a question of whether or why, whether one should have a purpose or why one should, but what and how. What is purpose and how should it be implemented effectively? Corporate purpose is more than a mission or a vision statement. It's not descriptive of what a company does or an aspirational statement of what it seeks to become. It's why a company exists, why it's created, its reason for being. It's about solving problems that you and I face as individuals, communities, societies, and the natural world. And it's about finding financially sustainable, commercially viable, and profitable ways of solving those problems. So the way in which I define a corporate purpose is as being about producing profitable solutions for problems of people and planet, not profiting from producing problems for either. It's not a nice to have, not an add-on. It's not philanthropy or corporate social responsibility doing some good on the side. It's not vague or woolly. It's core to a business, and it's the overarching framework for its strategy. It's about addressing meaningful challenges, and it's precise about what problems a company is seeking to solve, for whom, when, and how, and why it's particularly well suited to solve those problems. It recognizes that profit is not the purpose of business per se, but the product of producing profitable solutions. And I want to illustrate this with the case of a company. It's the Danish pharmaceutical company Novo Nordisk, which produces insulin. And a few years ago, it thought that its purpose was simply to produce insulin. But it came to realize that it was failing to deliver insulin to much of the world that needed it. 85% of type 2 diabetes is found in low and middle income countries, many of which could not afford to purchase Novo Nordisk's insulin. So it started to reconsider what its purpose was. And it concluded that its purpose was to help people treat type 2 diabetes, which might involve taking insulin, but in many cases might not. So it started working with hospitals and doctors and universities around the world to identify the best ways of treating type 2 diabetes. Then it recognized that actually its purpose was even more than that, not just about helping people treat type 2 diabetes, but helping them to avoid getting type 2 diabetes in the first place. So it started working with governments, with local authorities, with health workers around the world to identify the best changes in lifestyle which would help people avoid getting type 2 diabetes in the first place. Now you might say, well, that's all very well, all very worthwhile and noble, but surely it undermined Novo Nordisk's fundamental business model. And the answer is no, it did exactly the opposite. Its business has boomed on the back of it. And I think that illustrates 2 points. The first point I think it illustrates is that the reason why its business boomed on the back of identifying its purpose was that in the process of delivering its purpose, it built up all of those partnerships that I was talking about with hospitals, doctors, universities, governments, local authorities, health workers, etc. And in the process, it became a company that those other parties trusted to help them deliver solutions to the problems that people in their communities faced. And the second point that I think it illustrates is the importance of bringing clarity to the notion of purpose, bringing precision to what exactly one means by a corporate purpose. And then, if one can effectively commit to the delivery of purpose and build those partnerships in the way in which Novo Nordisk has done, then it creates one of the most valuable assets that a company can have, and that is to be trusted, to be regarded as being trustworthy. And notice the importance of this idea of building partnerships, because Novo Nordisk could not do this on its own. It could not have had the local information about the best forms of treatment or the changes in lifestyle that were required. It had to partner with others, with local parties in doing that. Now, this is not just a new business practice, though it is an innovative business practice, but it's also a systems transformation. It's about how can we shift the notion of what a corporate purpose is to recognizing that it is about finding commercially viable and profitable ways of solving problems. The British Academy, which is the UK's Academy of the Humanities and Social Sciences, has undertaken a program of work on the future of the corporation. And this month, it's publishing its final report in that program. It sets out the most comprehensive description to date of the change that is required to transform business from its current focus on shareholder primacy to what is needed in terms of producing profitable solutions for problems of people and planet. And it describes 8 principles for doing that around law and regulation, ownership and governance, measurement and performance, and finance and investment. It's not that we need more laws or more regulation. On the contrary, purposeful business should help to avoid the need for more intensive regulation. We need better use and application of existing laws and existing regulation. We need an appreciation of how one can use the existing framework to create better and more successful businesses. And the good news is that a framework exists for doing this. Not only is there a way to transform the system to promote purposeful business, but there's also a well-defined methodology for individual companies to adopt corporate purpose. And recently, together with a co-author, Bruno Roche, published a book called Putting Purpose into Practice, The Economics of Mutuality, in which we describe how it can be done and we exemplify it, how it has been done by 14 major companies around the world. We've also developed a methodology for doing it at Oxford University to assist boards with implementing corporate purpose. It's called the Enacting Purpose Initiative. And this sets out a framework for boards to help them to adopt purposeful businesses in their organizations. We've given this framework the acronym SCORE, where the 5 letters of SCORE stand for to simplify, connect, own, reward, and exemplify. It's been developed with the boards of some of the 60 largest European and North American companies and with 30 global institutional investors. The first letter, simplify, is about simplifying and clarifying the company's purpose, as I was just describing, in relation to Novo Nordisk's journey of discovering its purpose. And indeed, purpose is very much a journey of discovery of what one's purpose is and how to embed it in the business. The second letter, C, connect, is to connect with the strategy, to connect with all those parties who are needed to help deliver the purpose, as in the case of Novo Nordisk, the partnerships that it built, sometimes described as being ecosystem mapping and orchestration of the ecosystem within which companies need to operate. The third letter, O, stands for own, to ensure that there is the appropriate ownership of the business and that the purpose is owned throughout the business, from the board to the shop floor. In the case of Novo Nordisk, it has a very forthright owner who promotes its purpose in the form of the foundation, the Novo Nordisk Foundation, which controls some 75% of its shares. But it's more than just the formal ownership. It's the notion that everyone in the organization should feel a sense of their part of the ownership of the delivery of the company's purpose. The fourth letter, R, stands for reward, to reward people in the organization in relation to the delivery of the purpose, to ensure that the incentives within the organization are aligned with that. And that requires the measurement of the performance of the firm against its purpose and accounting for profit in relation to fulfillment of the purpose. Novo Nordisk, for example, measures its performance in relation to the number of patients it reaches through its diabetes products. There's a huge amount of confusion about measurement in relation to these issues, about what is sometimes termed non-financial measurement of performance. There are a plethora of measures, many of which are contradictory in nature, and it's estimated that in relation to ESG, environmental, social, and governance measures, the correlation between many of them is extremely low. We need much clearer, simpler links between metrics and companies' purposes. The fifth letter, E, stands for exemplify, to exemplify the purpose, to have narratives and stories to bring that purpose to life, to show that there's an authenticity about the delivery of the purpose and authenticity about the challenges and failures in delivery, as well as its successes. For example, in the case of Novo Nordisk, the failure originally to reach 85% of the world's population suffering from type 2 diabetes. Let me then just end with a second example, which illustrates, I think, some of the key elements of this process. In this case, I want to refer to one of the most successful banks in Europe. It's a bank that delivers some of the highest returns for its shareholders. It demonstrates consistently growing returns for its shareholders from before the financial crisis, during the crisis, and after the financial crisis. It needed no bailing out in the financial crisis. It's one of the best rated banks, has one of the highest credit ratings, and one of the strongest capital ratios. It's one of the fastest growing banks in the UK, but it's not a UK bank. It's the Swedish bank, Handelsbanken. Its purpose is essentially to put its customers first, and secondly, to be the lowest cost provider of any of its competitors. And it consistently outperforms its competitors in terms of the ratings, the customer ratings it receives from its customers. It also has some of the most loyal customers, and that brings out a very important element in terms of purpose, and that is if you look after your customers, and then your customers look after you. Now, what really distinguishes the bank is the nature of its governance. It's not the sort of traditional form of governance of a bank in a centralized hierarchical structure. It's a very devolved structure, devolving decision-taking and control to the individual branches. And indeed, the mantra of the bank is that the branches are the bank. Branch managers make decisions on what products, what price, how to market those products, what customers to serve. And associated with that is another distinguishing feature, and that is that it pays its bankers no bonus payments. Just remember how we're continuously told that one has to pay bonuses to people working in banks because otherwise you can't recruit and retain them. Well, it doesn't pay a bonus, at least until people retire at the age of 60, a very long-term incentive scheme. Instead, it places emphasis on selecting its branch managers, instilling values of the bank in them, and then leaving them to run their branches. And that really is a key aspect, to put trust in one's employees and to be in a position in which one can put trust in one's employees. Look after your employees, and your employees look after you. That, in particular, allows the branches to build up relations with their customers. So it's not a transactional bank, but a long-term relationship bank. And in essence, what it's doing is to create local banks at the branch level in the context of a large multinational organization. And it's worked for about 50 years since it first brought in this transformation in the 1970s. Purpose is indeed transformational for business and its stakeholders. It brings mutual benefits to all the parties involved. In this case, to its customers, to its employees, to those involved in the bank throughout. It's inspiring for those who work for purposeful business. It provides meaningful and fulfilling employment. It creates the most valuable asset for a firm, which, as I mentioned, is trust. It builds trust with customers that creates more loyal customers. It creates trust with employees in the form of more engaged employees, with suppliers, more reliable suppliers, with communities and societies, more supportive communities, societies and governments, and with the natural world, a sustainable world that promotes sustainable business. Because at the end of the day, trusted corporations are the most commercially successful corporations, and the success of business depends on the trustworthiness of its businesses as truly purposeful organizations. Thank you very much indeed.